The disrespect, a talented artist meets prejudice. Marcus adjusted the strap of his worn leather portfolio as he stood outside Gallery Étoile, one of the most prestigious art galleries in the city. The sleek glass facade gleamed in the afternoon sun, its golden lettering spelling out an air of exclusivity. Marcus felt a nervous flutter in his chest, but he reminded himself of the hours, days, and years he had poured into his craft. His work had meaning, stories of resilience, joy, and human connection. He just needed someone to see it. He pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped inside. The gallery was immaculate, its white walls adorned with contemporary pieces strategically spaced under soft spotlights. The faint hum of classical music filled the space, reinforcing its air of sophistication. Behind a polished counter stood Karen, the gallery's owner, who was engrossed in her tablet. Her tailored blazer and perfectly coiffed hair completed the image of someone who took herself, and her gallery, very seriously. Marcus hesitated for a moment before approaching. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm and polite. "I'm Marcus, an artist, and I was hoping to speak with someone about exhibiting my work here." Karen glanced up, her expression neutral at first, but as her eyes swept over him, it shifted into something colder, dismissive. She eyed his casual attire, a plain button-up shirt, jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her lips pursed ever so slightly. "We're very selective about the artists we feature," she said, her tone clipped. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, ma'am," Marcus replied, holding up his portfolio. "But I brought samples of my work. I think you might find it." Karen held up a manicured hand, cutting him off. "Let me stop you right there. Our gallery caters to a very specific clientele. They're looking for contemporary, high-concept pieces from established names." Marcus swallowed his disappointment but pressed on. "I understand, but if you could just take a look at my work, I think you might see something unique." Karen sighed, clearly annoyed, but extended her hand reluctantly. "Fine. Let's see what you've got." Marcus opened his portfolio with care, revealing the first piece, a vibrant painting of a young girl holding a lantern in a storm, her determined expression lighting up the chaos around her. The colors were bold and layered, the brushstrokes alive with emotion. Marcus set it on the counter, his heart pounding as he waited for Karen's reaction. Karen glanced at it briefly, then at Marcus. Her mouth curled into a smirk. "It's colorful," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But it's not exactly what we're looking for. Our clients prefer work that's more modern and abstract, something provocative, something that sparks conversation. This feels a bit sentimental." Marcus felt the sting of her words, but tried to remain composed. "Art is meant to connect with people, isn't it? My work tells stories that resonate on a personal level." Karen waved a hand dismissively. "That may be true, but our clientele isn't looking for something so pedestrian. This might do well in a local coffee shop or a community center, but it's not the kind of work that belongs here." The words hit Marcus like a slap. He had prepared himself for criticism, but the way Karen spoke, as though his art was inherently inferior, felt personal. "Thank you for your time," he said quietly, closing his portfolio with careful precision. As Marcus turned to leave, Karen called after him with a patronizing smile. "Good luck out there. Keep working on your craft, maybe one day you'll find your niche." Marcus walked out of the gallery, the bell on the door jingling faintly as it closed behind him. Outside, the city bustled around him, indifferent to the weight he now carried. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, clutching his portfolio tightly. Karen's dismissive tone echoed in his mind, but so did a flicker of determination. She had dismissed him, his work, his voice, but Marcus knew his worth. He had poured too much of himself into his art to let one rejection define him. Taking a deep breath, he straightened his shoulders and walked away, silently vowing that one day, the world would see what Karen could not. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The revelation: Marcus finds an unexpected champion. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, his portfolio resting on the nightstand like a silent witness to the rejection he'd just endured. Karen's words played on a loop in his mind, not the kind of work that belongs here, more suited for a coffee shop. His chest tightened with frustration, but behind the anger, a spark of determination flared. He wasn't ready to give up, not on himself, and certainly not on his art. He glanced at his laptop sitting on the small, paint-splattered desk across the room. Social media, he thought, could be a way to reach people directly, bypassing gatekeepers like Karen who refused to see value in his work. He took a deep breath, grabbed the laptop, and opened it. The social media post. Marcus uploaded photos of his paintings, the girl with the lantern, the elderly couple dancing under a flickering light, and the boy with the kite defying a looming storm. Each piece was rich with emotion, telling stories of resilience and human connection. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he crafted the post. Finally, he began to type. Today, I walked into a gallery with hope, carrying years of work that I poured my soul into. I wanted to share my art, my stories, with the world. Instead, I was dismissed because my work didn't fit the brand. Art is about connection. It's about emotion. It's about telling stories that resonate with people, no matter where they come from. I may not have the pedigree or the connections, but I believe in the power of my work to inspire and uplift. Here are some of my pieces. I hope they speak to you the way they speak to me. He hesitated for a moment before clicking post, unsure of what the reaction would be. Then, with a sigh, he closed the laptop and went to bed, telling himself not to get his hopes up. The post goes viral. The next morning, Marcus was startled awake by the persistent buzz of his phone. Groggy, he reached for it and saw dozens of notifications flooding his screen. Blinking in disbelief, he opened his social media app and found that his post had taken off overnight. Comments poured in, thousands of them, from people moved by his story and captivated by his art. This is breathtaking. Your work is so powerful. I can feel the emotion in every brushstroke. Thank you for sharing this. Don't let anyone tell you your art isn't good enough. The world needs this. Marcus scrolled through the overwhelming support, his heart racing. He couldn't believe it, his work, dismissed by Karen as pedestrian, was resonating with people from all over the world. His inbox was flooded with messages from fans, fellow artists, and even potential buyers asking about his pieces. A renowned critic takes notice. Among the comments, one stood out. It was from Claudia Rossi, a renowned art critic and columnist for The Creative Eye, a publication celebrated for discovering and championing groundbreaking talent. Her words stopped Marcus in his tracks. Your work is extraordinary. It's raw, emotional, and deeply human. I'd love to feature you in my column, please reach out. Marcus's breath caught. Claudia Rossi wasn't just a critic, she was a tastemaker, someone whose endorsement could change an artist's career overnight. He immediately replied, thanking her for her kind words and expressing his excitement. Later that day, Marcus and Claudia spoke over the phone. Her voice was warm and animated, filled with genuine enthusiasm. Marcus, your work is a revelation, she said. Each piece tells a story that feels universal, yet deeply personal. This is the kind of art the world needs to see. They discussed his journey, his inspirations, and the stories behind his paintings. Claudia was particularly moved by the piece of the girl with the lantern. It's not just a painting, she said. It's a message of hope, of light in the darkness. It's remarkable. The feature article. A week later, Claudia's column was published online under the headline, Marcus, the artist who paints the soul of humanity. The article included high-resolution images of his work and an in-depth profile of his journey, from his humble beginnings to his rejection at Galerie Étoile. Claudia wrote with passion, describing Marcus's art as a celebration of resilience and connection that speaks to the core of what it means to be human. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The article went viral, shared thousands of times across social media, and picked up by major news outlets. Marcus's name became synonymous with authenticity and emotional depth, and his inbox overflowed with messages from collectors, galleries, and admirers eager to support his work. a rising star. In the weeks that followed, Marcus's world transformed. Collectors who had ignored him before now scrambled to purchase his pieces. A museum in New York reached out to include his work in an upcoming exhibit, and a prominent art fair invited him to showcase his collection as a headlining artist. But what moved Marcus most were the messages from everyday people who connected with his story. One email from a single mother read, "Your painting of the girl with the lantern brought me to tears. It reminded me of my own struggles as a parent, trying to light the way for my kids. Thank you for creating something so beautiful." Another came from a young artist who had almost given up on their dream. "Seeing your story gives me hope. Thank you for showing me that art matters, no matter who tries to shut you out." From rejection to revelation. As Marcus stood in his studio, now bustling with activity, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought him here. Karen's rejection, though painful, had led him to this moment, a moment where his work was not only seen but celebrated by people from all walks of life. He had found his audience, not through the approval of gatekeepers like Karen, but by staying true to himself and his art. And as his star continued to rise, Marcus vowed to use his newfound platform to uplift others who had been overlooked, ensuring that their voices, too, would be heard. The rise, an artist's journey to stardom. The transformation in Marcus's life was both rapid and surreal. What had begun as a viral post and a feature in the Creative Eye had snowballed into a global phenomenon. Overnight, Marcus became a household name in the art world, his work celebrated not only for their beauty but for the raw emotion and humanity they conveyed. His pieces, once dismissed by gatekeepers like Karen, were now the subject of fierce bidding wars at international auctions, with collectors and museums clamoring to acquire his art. The first $1 million sale. The pivotal moment came during an auction at Christie's, one of the world's most prestigious auction houses. Marcus's Echoes of Hope, a painting of a young girl standing against a backdrop of storm clouds, her hands cupping a flickering flame, was the centerpiece of the event. The work encapsulated Marcus's journey, its themes of resilience and light in the face of adversity resonating deeply with viewers. The bidding started at $500,000, a number that Marcus could scarcely believe. As the auctioneer called out the bids, the numbers climbed rapidly. 600. 700. 800,000. The room buzzed with energy, and Marcus, sitting quietly in the back, felt his heart race. When the gavel finally fell, the painting had sold for $2.5 million. The room erupted in applause, and Marcus sat frozen, the magnitude of the moment sinking in. His work, once dismissed as unsuitable, was now being celebrated as a masterpiece. Global recognition. The sale of Echoes of Hope marked the beginning of Marcus's rise to international fame. Museums from around the world reached out, eager to feature his work in their collections. The Louvre requested his Threads of Resilience for a temporary exhibit on contemporary storytelling, while the Tate Modern in London dedicated an entire wing to a retrospective of his art. Marcus found himself traveling across the globe, attending openings, galas, and lectures. His art became a universal language, connecting people from different cultures and backgrounds through its themes of humanity, perseverance, and love. Critics hailed him as a visionary, comparing his work to the likes of Basquiat and Kahlo for its emotional depth and cultural significance. Major publications featured him on their covers, with headlines like "Marcus, the voice of a generation and the artist redefining modern art. A platform for change." Despite his rapid ascent, Marcus remained grounded. He viewed his success not as an endpoint but as an opportunity to create meaningful change in the art world. He established the Marcus Foundation for Emerging Artists, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting underrepresented talent. The foundation provided grants, mentorship, and exhibition opportunities to artists from marginalized communities, ensuring that their voices would be heard. "The art world has been dominated by exclusivity for too long," Marcus said during the foundation's launch event. "There are so many talented artists who never get a chance simply because they don't fit the mold. I want to break down those barriers and create a space where everyone's story can be told." The Foundation's first initiative, the Voices Unheard exhibit, featured work from 50 emerging artists, many of whom had never displayed their work publicly. The exhibit was a massive success, drawing thousands of visitors and critical acclaim. Several of the participating artists went on to secure gallery representation and commissions, crediting Marcus with changing their lives. Staying true to himself. Amid the whirlwind of fame, Marcus remained connected to his roots. He still worked in the same small studio he had started in, surrounded by unfinished canvases and the familiar smell of turpentine. His art continued to explore themes of resilience and connection, each piece a reflection of his journey and the stories he encountered along the way. In interviews, Marcus often spoke about the importance of staying authentic. "Fame can be fleeting," he said in a televised interview. "What matters is the impact you leave behind, the stories you tell and the lives you touch." Inspiring the next generation. Marcus's story inspired countless people, both within and beyond the art world. Aspiring artists, many of whom had faced rejection, saw him as proof that perseverance and authenticity could triumph over gatekeeping and prejudice. During a Q&A session at a major art festival in New York, a young artist stood up and asked, "How did you keep going when people didn't believe in you?" Marcus smiled, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I kept going because I believed in my work, even when others didn't." Art is about connection. It's about making people feel something. As long as you stay true to that, no one can take your voice away. The crowd erupted into applause, and the young artist beamed, inspired by Marcus's words. The art world's new era. Marcus's rise didn't just change his life, it began to shift the art world itself. Galleries that had once prioritized exclusivity and prestige over authenticity started to re-evaluate their practices. Museums sought to diversify their collections, and art schools introduced programs focused on inclusivity and representation. For Marcus, this was his greatest achievement, not the million-dollar sales or the global acclaim, but the knowledge that he had helped create a more equitable space for future generations of artists. A legacy in the making. As Marcus stood in his studio one evening, working on a new painting, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about Karen's rejection, the viral post that changed everything, and the countless people who had supported him along the way. His latest piece, titled "The Light We Carry," depicted a group of diverse figures standing together, each holding a glowing flame. It was a tribute to the power of resilience, community, and hope, a message that had defined his life and his work. Marcus knew his journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever came next. He had found his voice, his platform, and his purpose, and he wasn't done yet. The surprise, Marcus secretly buys the gallery. Months after Marcus had become a household name in the art world, his life seemed to embody the perfect success story. He was celebrated, wealthy, and admired, yet his thoughts occasionally wandered back to Gallery Etoile and the moment Karen had dismissed him so cruelly. It wasn't bitterness that brought the memory back, but curiosity. What had happened to the gallery that once symbolized gatekeeping and exclusivity in the art world? One day, while scanning industry news, Marcus's eyes landed on an article that stopped him cold. Gallery Etoile faces financial ruin amid leadership struggles. The piece detailed how Karen's outdated practices, poor financial decisions, and refusal to adapt to changing art trends had left the gallery on the brink of collapse. Attendance had dwindled, high-profile artists had severed ties, and mounting debts had placed the gallery in dire straits. Marcus set the article down, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The irony wasn't lost on him. Karen's rigid approach, the same exclusivity that had dismissed him, was now driving her gallery into irrelevance. But as he reflected on the gallery's plight, an idea began to take shape, not out of vengeance, but as an opportunity for transformation. The silent acquisition. Marcus began working with his legal and financial advisors to orchestrate the purchase of Gallery Etoile. He was meticulous, ensuring that his identity would remain hidden until the time was right. Using intermediaries, he negotiated the deal quietly, navigating the gallery's labyrinth of financial woes. The gallery was in worse shape than he'd anticipated. Debt had accumulated, the staff was demoralized, and the once pristine reputation of Gallery Etoile had eroded. Marcus's advisors questioned the wisdom of the investment, but he stood firm. "This isn't just a business decision," he explained. "It's a chance to rewrite the narrative, to turn this gallery into a place where every artist has a voice." Once the purchase was finalized, Marcus arranged a meeting with Karen. She had been informed that the gallery had been sold to a new owner, but had no details about who it was. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, and Marcus decided to deliver the news personally. The moment of truth. Karen stood behind the gallery's counter, reviewing paperwork with a look of exasperation. The space was eerily quiet, the echoes of her heels on the marble floor a reminder of the emptiness around her. The gallery, once bustling with activity, now felt like a shadow of its former self. When Marcus walked through the doors, Karen glanced up briefly, her expression neutral. She didn't recognize him at first, her mind too preoccupied with the gallery's struggles. "Good afternoon," she said, her tone polite but weary. "How can I help you?" Marcus stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Actually," he said calmly, "I believe we have a meeting scheduled." Karen frowned, confusion flickering across her face. "You're the new owner?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Marcus nodded, pulling a set of documents from his briefcase and placing them on the counter. "That's right." Karen's hands trembled as she picked up the papers, her eyes scanning the details. Her face went pale as the realization hit her. I don't understand. Why would someone like you?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, his voice measured but firm. "Why would someone like me buy this gallery? Maybe because I see potential. Or maybe because I wanted to ensure no artist ever walks through these doors and feels the way I did that day." Karen's eyes widened as recognition dawned. "Marcus," she whispered, the name catching in her throat. Her mind raced back to their first meeting, the man with the leather portfolio, the painting she had barely glanced at before dismissing him. The memory hit her like a tidal wave, her heart sinking under the weight of it. Karen's moment of reckoning. Karen stood frozen, unable to find the words to respond. Marcus's calm but piercing gaze didn't waver. "Do you remember what you said to me?" he asked, his tone even but laced with meaning. "You told me my work didn't belong here, that it was more suited for a coffee shop." Karen's cheeks flushed with shame as the memory came rushing back. I was wrong," she stammered. "If I'd known." "It shouldn't have mattered who I was," Marcus interrupted gently. "What should have mattered was the work. But you didn't give it a chance." Karen lowered her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're right. I let my prejudice cloud my judgment. I failed you, and I failed so many others." Marcus let the silence linger for a moment before speaking again. "You have a choice," he said. "You can walk away, or you can stay and help me turn this gallery into something better, a place where all artists are welcome, regardless of where they come from or what they look like." Karen looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "I want to stay," she said earnestly. "I want to make things right. Please, let me prove that I can change." A new beginning. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Karen worked together to lay the groundwork for the gallery's transformation. Marcus brought in a team of advisors to help restructure operations, while Karen focused on repairing relationships with artists she had once alienated. She reached out personally, apologizing and inviting them to participate in the gallery's new vision. The sterile, exclusive atmosphere that had once defined Gallery Etoile began to fade. The walls were soon adorned with vibrant, diverse works from underrepresented artists, each piece telling a powerful story. Community events, artist workshops, and educational programs became regular fixtures, drawing in a broader, more engaged audience. Karen threw herself into the work, determined to earn the trust of both Marcus and the art community. Slowly but surely, her sincerity began to shine through. Artists who had once vowed never to set foot in the gallery returned, impressed by the transformation and Karen's humility. Karen's redemption. One evening, after a successful exhibition opening, Karen approached Marcus as they stood in the bustling gallery. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Not just for giving me a second chance, but for showing me what this place could be." Marcus nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's not about the past," he said. "It's about what we build moving forward." Karen felt a lump rise in her throat as she looked around the gallery, now filled with energy and life. She had made mistakes, but with Marcus's guidance, she was helping to create something meaningful, a space that celebrated all voices, not just the privileged few. A legacy of change. As Gallery Étoile continued to flourish, it became a symbol of transformation and inclusivity. Marcus's vision had not only saved the gallery but had turned it into a global hub for diverse talent, inspiring similar changes in institutions around the world. For Karen, it was more than a redemption story, it was a lesson in humility, growth, and the power of second chances. And for Marcus, it was proof that even the harshest rejection could lead to something extraordinary. Together, they had turned a symbol of exclusion into a beacon of hope and possibility. The transformation, a new era for the gallery. The echoes of laughter and conversation filled Gallery Étoile as visitors wandered through its halls, marveling at the new array of artwork adorning its walls. The transformation was undeniable. Once a bastion of exclusivity and gatekeeping, the gallery was now a vibrant, welcoming space where voices from all walks of life were celebrated. Marcus stood near the entrance, watching the energy of the room with quiet satisfaction. His vision for the gallery had taken shape, but it wouldn't have been possible without Karen's willingness to embrace change. An offer with conditions. When Marcus first offered Karen the chance to stay on as manager, he had been clear about his expectations. "This gallery will no longer be about exclusion," he had told her. "If you're going to stay, you need to be ready to embrace diversity, respect all artists, and help turn this place into a hub for underrepresented voices." Karen had nodded, her voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "I understand," she said. "I've made mistakes, big ones, but I want to make this right. Please, let me prove that I can change." Karen's reflection. Karen's journey of transformation began with introspection. She spent hours reflecting on her past behavior, the snap judgments, the dismissive comments, the opportunities she had denied to talented artists who didn't fit her narrow criteria. Marcus's calm yet firm words echoed in her mind, "It shouldn't have mattered who I was. What should have mattered was the work." Determined to make amends, Karen sought out resources to educate herself. She attended workshops on diversity and inclusion in the arts, read books about the experiences of marginalized artists, and listened to their stories with an open heart. She realized that her prejudice had not only hurt individuals like Marcus, but had also deprived the gallery of the richness that comes from embracing diverse perspectives. Rebuilding trust. Rebuilding trust was no easy task, especially in a community that had seen Karen as a gatekeeper for so long. Her first step was reaching out to the artists she had once turned away. She wrote heartfelt letters of apology, acknowledging her mistakes and inviting them to be part of the gallery's new chapter. Some artists responded with skepticism, while others were willing to give her, and the gallery, a second chance. Karen met with them individually, listening to their concerns and learning from their experiences. Each conversation humbled her, deepening her commitment to the gallery's transformation. Under Marcus's guidance, Karen worked tirelessly to create a new culture within the gallery. The walls that had once showcased only a narrow definition of art now came alive with pieces from diverse artists, each telling a unique story. The gallery hosted community events, artist talks, and workshops, fostering an environment of connection and collaboration. A global hub for talent. As word spread about Gallery Étoile's transformation, its reputation soared. Critics who had once dismissed the gallery as outdated now praised it as a trailblazer for inclusivity in the art world. Attendance skyrocketed, with visitors traveling from around the globe to experience its exhibits. One of the most celebrated events was the gallery's Voices of the World exhibition, which featured artists from over 20 countries. The exhibit highlighted themes of resilience, identity, and cultural heritage, drawing thousands of visitors and widespread acclaim. Karen played a key role in curating the exhibition, working closely with Marcus and the artists to ensure their stories were authentically represented. Seeing the gallery filled with people who connected deeply with the art on display was a moment of profound fulfillment for her. Karen's redemption. Through her dedication and sincerity, Karen began to rebuild her reputation within the art community. Artists who had once viewed her as an obstacle now saw her as an ally. She became a vocal advocate for emerging talent, often mentoring young artists and helping them navigate the challenges of the art world. One evening, after a particularly successful opening, Karen approached Marcus as they stood in the middle of the bustling gallery. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me the chance to be part of this. I've learned so much from you, about art, about people, and about myself." Marcus smiled, his voice warm but grounded. "You earned this, Karen. Change isn't easy, but you've shown that it's possible. A lasting legacy." Together, Marcus and Karen continued to build Gallery Étoile into a beacon of hope and creativity. The gallery became a model for other institutions, proving that inclusivity and excellence were not mutually exclusive but mutually reinforcing. Marcus's commitment to diversity and Karen's humility and determination created a partnership that inspired the art world to rethink its values. The gallery's profits soared, not just from sales but from the goodwill it had cultivated. The success allowed Marcus to expand his philanthropic efforts, funding scholarships for aspiring artists and launching community art programs in underserved areas. The celebration. Years later, during the gallery's 10th anniversary under Marcus's ownership, Karen stood on stage beside him as they addressed a packed crowd. Her voice, once tinged with arrogance, was now steady and sincere. "This gallery has been more than a place to display art," Karen said. "It's been a space for connection, growth, and understanding. It's taught me that art isn't about fitting into a mold, it's about breaking barriers and sharing stories that matter." Marcus stepped forward, his words resonating with the room. "Art has the power to change the world because it changes the way we see each other. This gallery is proof of that. It's not just about the artists who exhibit here, it's about everyone who walks through these doors and leaves with a new perspective." The audience erupted into applause, their admiration for the duo palpable. Karen looked at Marcus, gratitude shining in her eyes. "We've come a long way," she said softly. "And we're just getting started," Marcus replied, his smile reflecting the pride and hope that had fueled their journey. Together, they had turned Gallery Étoile into a symbol of transformation, a testament to the power of humility, vision, and the belief that art truly belongs to everyone.